This is Lead Generation Meets Sales Process. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to introduce our speakers in just a moment, but first I want to introduce the audience. So there were 200 registrations, actually 275. If 150 show up, I will be very impressed. And thank you to the first 50, 75. I'm not sure what the number is that have signed in, but thank you for joining us. Folks are going to continue signing in. We've got CEOs, sales execs, the Nerdwise team, Nerdwise clients and partners, friends in attendance. Thank you and welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to be discussing kind of the ideal relationship between when a lead is generated and the process in which we handle those leads, from lead handling process to close and all the way to new customer. We're going to leverage our panel of experts and pick their brains through that inception of the first meeting, the first call, through that process, how we can optimize things for maximum value. What are some of those best practices and activities we can do to secure those opportunities? Our topics are going to include from lead to opportunity, optimizing that process, nurturing the sales pipeline over time, and how we can all close more deals. If you have questions, please chat them in. That will get you first in line. Michael Coop is going to be moderating those questions towards the end of the discussion. We can call on you if you'd like to ask it yourself, or we can facilitate it, but chatting in your questions will be a way to make sure we get to that before the end of the session today. I want to introduce our speakers. We have 4 panelists joining us. They are all sales experts. James Rores, Mr. High Definition himself, is the founder, CEO of Floriss Group. If you haven't checked out all of these websites for our speakers, I highly encourage you to. They've all got phenomenal content, phenomenal tools, and if I in any way come short introducing them, their websites will give you a complete picture of what they do and the expertise they bring to the table. But James Rores, founder, CEO of Floriss Group. We've got Jessica Magoch, founder and CEO of JPM Sales Partners. Frank Bastone, who is the CEO of The Social Expert. And then Ronnell Richards, founder of Ronnell Richards, who is a award-winning entrepreneur, host of Business and Bourbon, and author of Shut the Hell Up and Sell. I'm going to do the first half of that in a moment, which is shutting the hell up and hearing from these experts. So I want to kick this thing off right now with our first question, and it's around what do we do with a bad lead? I think we all at least know more so what to do with a good lead, and we want to continue to pursue that, nurture it, take care of it. But what happens when we get a bad lead? What do we do? Do we try to convert it? What are some of the things that you do when you have a lead that you're not sure if it's actually an opportunity or if it fits your target customer profile? Whatever the case is, you've just had a meeting you with somebody that you thought was interested and it's not a good lead. You don't think it's going to go anywhere. What are next steps? I'll start with you, James Rores, and then we can go around the room. But what do you do with a bad lead?
Well, so the first thing I think about is the individual that I'm reaching out to a bad lead, quote unquote, or is it the organization that represents a bad lead? We're all going to be struggling with this idea of no now isn't necessarily a no never. So we want to cultivate. We're driven to cultivate that relationship, especially if we have a marketing organization and assets available to us that can invest in that cultivation without us being manually involved in it. But the first thing to think about, is it the individual or is it the account? Make the distinction, and then also make sure that you're leveraging data to qualify whether or not they're good or bad, so that you can give direction to the team that's going to help you cultivate and nurture that relationship with the account or with the individual. Give them guidance and make sure they're investing wisely in next steps.
Wow, great. Any other anyone want to add to that? What do we do with a bad lead?
I'll add to that real quick. First of all, James, terrific answer. The lead generation process and our lead generation teams, SDRs and AEs, really have to work together, right? So, what James had just spoke about in terms of using that as a somewhat of a coaching or teaching moment, take that information back to your SDRs, help them to do their job a little bit better. But, you know, in my business and in all of our business, we're in the relationship business, right? We're in the business of building long-term relationships. That's how we're ultimately successful in sales. So I would say that you still, whether you have great alignment and that's someone you can work with or not, you still need to be looking to serve them, right? So connect them, be a connector, find resources for them, because that person could be an advocate for you down the road.
So create a great experience, still create some value there. Great addition, Ronnell. Anybody else want to jump in? What do we do with a bad lead?
Yeah, Ronnell, I'll jump in after that. That was definitely great. And adding value to somebody and helping somebody out who's not necessarily a good fit is a real great value add. And also staying in touch with them and finding a way or having a methodology to, after you've helped somebody, sort of stay in touch with them with a drip, or stay in touch with them with emails, because someone you speak to today with a small company in 6 months could have doubled or tripled in size and be a great prospect. So showing that you appreciate them. You know, I like to send handwritten thank you cards after I have conversations. And even if somebody's not a good lead for me, I send a handwritten thank you card if they gave me their time. And I think it means a lot to how you treat people who may not be the right fit for you, but how much you try to help them. So I think that was, you know, that was a great tip.
Jessica, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do. So I'm thinking back to my, like, when I first started selling, and my manager told me a lead is never dead until they're literally dead, until you call and they say, I'm sorry, they passed away. And even then, there's someone else you could probably talk to, right? So that, and then the other part of that is a lead always leads to a sale. If you have that mindset that every lead leads to a sale, it might not be the person's name that originally, you know, put the contact in, or the company, but having that mindset of every lead leads to a sale, I just need to find out where it is. So that means if I have a meeting with someone and they're just not a good fit, I just know they're not even a good fit for what we do, then I'm always going to ask for referrals, because we've, you know, developed a relationship, and then they know what we do, and I'll help them get some business and they'll help me get some business. So every lead leads to a sale. You just got to put on your detective hat and find out where it is.
I love all 4 answers, and it's amazing what different perspectives and what you each just added to that same scenario. And everyone kind of had their own addition, and I love it. It just shows how the breadth of sales and how it can go in so many different directions. And there's so many different things you can do with a lead, with an opportunity, with your process. So love all those contributions. I want to flip it to what do we do with a good lead? What are some of the things you just had a great meeting, a great call, all the buying signals are there, right? They're excited. They seem like they're ready to move forward. What are some of the things a salesperson should do now that they recognize, wow, this lead is legit, they want to move forward? What are a few things that a salesperson should kind of have in their process to make sure that they maximize the value of that lead and the chances of it turning into an opportunity and a customer? And we can keep going with the same order unless someone wants to jump in.
Go for it, Jessica.
All right.
Let's mix it up.
You know, I'm thinking of this, a lot of this is semantics, because we really have to define, you know, what is a lead, what is an opportunity, like where everyone kind of looks at it a little bit differently. So, I mean, the answers might vary depending on that. But because you said, what do they do when they're showing buying signals? So to me, that means anytime someone shows a buying signal, I close. And that doesn't mean I close and, you know, ask for the check, but I close to the next step. So someone's saying interested, you set the next meeting. Don't get off the phone until there's another meeting scheduled, or the, you know, next person you need to talk to, next step set up. So that's the best. I mean, that's the best advice I could give. If someone's hot on the call, you just make sure the next step is solidified and you close that. Every step in the sales process has a close.
Great.
First conversation, there's a close to that. The close is the next meeting, and then the next meeting after that. And however, you know, depending on the size of the company, it could be a lot of steps, but
Yes.
yeah. Close.
I'll pop in right quick. How do we know it's a good lead? How do we know it's a good lead? And I'm going to, here's what I mean by that. And what I want to challenge, because what I see so often with sellers is we see what we want to see. Right. And I'm just
Happy
a huge
ears.
proponent of doing tremendous work on the front end, doing great discovery, doing detailed discovery, right? Because oftentimes what we're judging as a good lead is really based upon what matters to us, right? Oh, well, they have this whatever perceived pain point, and we fix that pain point. And so I spent a lot of time talking to sellers and entrepreneurs about, hey, let's get away from us and really get back to the service, get back to really doing deep discovery where we understand what matters, not what matters in their business, not as it directly relates to our product and service and what we sell, but what really matters to them in their business. The old adage that I know and the cliche that we're all tired of is, what keeps you up at night? Don't ever use that. Don't ever use that. Okay. No one, people don't respond well to that.
But watching on Netflix, that's what keeps me up at night.
There we go. But the philosophy is kind of the same. I mean, we really want to get at what is going on in their business. Once we really understand that, then first of all, we understand how we can craft our solution. Guys, I've sold lots of different things. And whether I'm selling ice cream or I'm selling broadband, like I can craft that solution in a way to address what they care the most about once I really understand what they care the most about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll take one here. I also think it's important when you're speaking to somebody to dig into the next steps and find out if there's any other parts of the sale or anything else involved before you hang up. So when you're speaking to a decision maker, sometimes it's not the actual decision maker and you guys are talking and it seems like a great lead, but you don't dig deep enough to find out if they're the person that's going to be making the final decision. Is there anybody else in their team that you're going to be involved with? And can we get buy-in from them to shorten the sales cycle? Because a lot of times somebody will come to me and say, hey, I got this great lead. And I'll say, great, so how's this gonna work? What are the next 3 or 4 steps? Who else is involved? And they don't dig quite deep enough. And we have to have 2 or 3 more calls when we could shorten that cycle and find out all the players and then map out from now until closing. And it happens a lot more efficiently and effectively that way.
Right on, Frank. Yeah, so I agree with everything I've heard so far. Jessica's point is you got to have a process. You have to know what the next step in your process is. Ronnell and Frank are talking about, this idea of understanding what the definition of qualified is. There's a book just written and released, 3 guys out of the UK called Problem Prospecting. I love the book because it aligns with the way we look at the world. A qualified lead by definition is someone that has a problem you can solve that must be solved now, period. Right? I do not want anything else entering my pipeline, entering my process. If it's not a problem that we can solve, that must be solved now. So it's a qualification process that says, are you ready to buy from me? And are you well aligned with the solution that I offered? Notice I'm not pitching my solution. I'm defining their problem. We define a problem very simply: want, impact plus a need. The win equals the problem. Can I do that in 5 minutes? Yes. Do that, identify that what by when, make sure it's going to be, depending on your sales cycle, now could mean next 2 weeks, next 2 months, next 3 months, next year. In the automotive industry, it's a 4 or 5 year sales cycle. Whatever now means to you, that time component must be there. And you must qualify for it so you're not doing what Frank is suggesting. You're not wasting time on cycles that aren't going to end up in a sale. 60%, 58%, based on some estimates, of a B2B sales pipeline today end in no decision. You're wasting 60% of your time that comes into your pipe if it's not qualified properly. Don't make that mistake.
All good. And I'm going to start to put a little more speed on these questions, throw some fastballs at you guys and girls. And my next question is, we know, not to say, I don't want to assume that we know this, but question asking everyone, listening, asking the right questions is a very important part of any sales process. And for your sales process, asking the right questions, right? That for your customer, your buyer, all those things. What comes next? Forget question asking and listening. We know that's important. What else? What also is most important to taking it from a lead to an opportunity? Not just asking questions. We know that, but what else? What are the activities? What are the parts of the process that you follow or that you recommend that you think someone should have in their process besides digging in, besides asking questions, to help take that from lead to opportunity? I think we touched on some of them, but what are some of the other ways that you that you think you can turn a lead to an opportunity?
Okay, I'm gonna pop in really quick because I don't want to just jump past that because it is so important. Like yeah, we all know. Okay, ask great questions, but what does that mean? Because that's not what we're really taught, right? Sellers aren't really taught that. They're taught, okay, sit down in the meeting and, hey, Jessica, thanks for sitting down with me. We got 30 minutes. Okay, 15 minutes. I'm gonna ask you questions about you, and then 15 minutes I'm gonna tell you about me. It's all backwards. It's totally about not just asking these great open-ended questions, but actively listening, which sellers we suck at. Because we're constantly thinking about what am I going to say and how does this fit my product and service and the value prop that my corporate guy taught me, my trainer taught me. So I'm sorry. It's so important to me and so important to sellers. And it's an area that we skip over and really miss a lot of the time. And that's why we're not separating ourselves and differentiating ourselves from the competition. All right. Somebody else can answer the question.
Well, I totally agree with you, Ron. And you could have 3 or 4 meetings just asking questions. It's a mindset thing, when you guys all work with people, salespeople, so it's really a mindset thing. Are you there to make a sale or are you there to help them?
Right.
So if you're there to help them, you're going to ask as many questions as you possibly can to make sure that you present the right solution in the way they need to hear it to solve the problem they have. And if you're in there just to make a sale, you're going to do the demo as soon as you can. You're going to pitch yourself. You're going to talk about yourself. You're going to talk most of the time. And it all comes back to mindset, because you won't do those. You'll avoid those activities if you're coming in for the right reasons.
Right. And I think to your point, the greatest disservice that's done for a salesperson is the step in the process called discovery, right? Because to Ronnell's point, discovery just means you kind of understanding what's in the mind of the buyer. You have to do more than that. You have to ask questions that provoke the buyer, right? If you're truly gonna qualify a buyer for a problem that you can solve that must be solved now, you have to expand their idea about what problems they could be facing. And you can't do that by just telling them what they should be looking for. You have to ask questions that expand the idea of what they might want to achieve for their organization. You have to ask them questions that expand the idea of the impact that change could have on their business. So you can expand the budget that they're actually going to bring to the table. And you have to expand their idea of the needs that they think they have in front of them. And you've got to be prepared to do all this by understanding the true, the goals that you can deliver to the organizations that you want to work with. So that comes back to your question, Patrick. You've got to have an idea of your always buyer. So you can expand the thinking of these leads and these people you're talking to, expand the idea that they can bring to the table and the idea that they can change, make yourself appear to be and actually be more valuable than the next salesperson they're going to talk to.
Yeah, James, I think that's great. And also I talk a lot about lazy discovery. So pre-call research is so important, or pre-demo research is so important. And when I watch some demos, I see people asking questions that are stupid questions because they could have figured this stuff out before they ask. And when you come into a demo and you've done your real homework and you've dug deep and you understand at a baseline where they are, and then you can ask the deeper questions, you can get right into the real stuff. And I see so many demos for 20 minutes asking stupid questions that are all available online they can figure out. So why would they be asking questions that are easily understandable and easily searchable and wasting someone's time when you can come in and say, I know this, and this about you. And now from this is the deep question I have. I think people spend too much time in discovery with things that they don't need to spend time with.
Patrick, I can't answer your question though. I want it really quick. I want to answer your question is when we do this great discovery that we're all talking about right here, it creates it allows you to close organically, because when you do this great discovery, here's what your prospects do. They tell you everything you need to know. They're not only going to give you all the ingredients, but they're going to tell you the recipe to close them. And so you just bring that back to them. You throw that back at them in a solution.
Yep. So
Sorry, Patrick, we dodged your question.
oh no, I mean it's the right answer, I think, and actually I think Ronnell, your first answer was, even though you were challenging me, you also said listening, and that is the other side of the coin, right? And not just asking the question. I think that being a good listener, hearing it, and even confirming maybe that understanding, absolutely. And my next question to you guys is, for sales organizations, for companies, and for the reps that are out there selling, and I'm getting down to process. How do they know what questions to ask, right? I mean, they're not all the same, right? I mean, and from a process perspective, right? What are those questions? And maybe you have some that fit many situations, but either what are the questions you go to, or how does somebody figure out what are the right questions to be asking?
Right.
From a process perspective.
I can give mine. I mean, that pretty much every type of sale needs to know these 6 things before you present a solution. So I'll share those. The first thing is fit, which that people naturally do that, right? They want to make sure, like, do we integrate with your software, things like that. That's salespeople don't miss that one. Then it's need. What's the problem? Okay. Do they have a problem I can solve? My favorite question for that is, how can I help you? And let them talk, and then just keep digging in. Then urgency, which James, you're talking about urgency, right? So when do you want to solve the problem? Is it in a time within a reasonable time frame for us to be having the next steps in this conversation? And then decision makers and decision-making process. So who needs buy-in, and what is the process at your company for making a decision? Budget. What have you budgeted? How do you get budget? What's the process for getting budget? This is the range of our services. Is that within your budget? Like, there's lots of ways to ask that question, but they need to know what to expect as far as budget, and that you're aligned as far as that's concerned. And then competition. Who else are you considering? How are you doing that now? I want to know who I'm competing with. And then what was the 6th one? Did I miss one? Budget, need, urgency, fit, competition. That's it. Those are the 6, right? Did I miss one?
We need an acronym, Jessica. We need a 6-letter acronym.
There's so many acronyms for
Give
it.
it
Right?
to us.
But that's what, I mean, those are mine. If you guys have to add on to those, that would be awesome. But the ones that are really different for each organization are those qualifications. Do we technically, fit together? Can we actually help you?
Oh, I think Jessica's answer that was awesome. Like, in terms of from the qualification standpoint, like, obviously we got to qualify them, right? You got to know this is someone that we have some sort of alignment with, that we can do business with. I tend to look at these things from the decision maker standpoint, not philosophically, like literally, because for 20 years I'm not only training my sales teams and everything, but I'm the guy. I'm the decision maker, right? And as a decision maker, I don't care about what you care about. I don't. I care about what I care about. So, once we've obviously qualified them, we've asked those qualifying questions. Let's get to what they care about. Starts with how they make money. How do you make, when you engage me as a decision maker and want to know about how I make money, let me tell you something, that's going to open up everything else. Once I start talking, oh, this is how we make money, then we'll start moving into what's costing me money, all those sorts of things. And those are pain points that'll get people talking. And always, anything else, keep pushing, right, guys? Anything else.
Great.
Oh, Frank.
Yeah. That was a lot. So when you're, when you're qualifying them, it's also important to think about what is most important to them and digging into that with regard to their positions. So a CIO has different sort of needs, and he wants a different outcome than somebody like a CFO who might be cost savings, or a CEO who might be employee engagement. So I think finding out what the deeper reason for the solution is sometimes nice, and digging a little deeper. So that's what I'd say there. You guys covered a lot of stuff.
That's excellent. That's excellent. We in our organization, we follow the WINS model: wants, impacts, needs, solutions. And the reason we do that is because it's simple, but also it's the fastest path to cash. So if you think about it, when you're talking with an individual, when you ask them what they want or what their goals are, that will tell you whether or not you have an active buying cycle. It's what they want to achieve. It's that reason that they're going to change. People buy when they're ready, willing, and able to change. What do you want that you don't have? That will tell you if there's an active buying cycle, and that will help you qualify out people that are just kicking the tires or window shopping or wasting your time. Then this idea of impact is going to tell you what the business case is, right? What is the impact of success, failure, or doing nothing, right? You have to know what the impact is, to Jessica's point, because you want to know how big the budget could be, right? Over 80% of B2B purchases today are unbudgeted. So it's nice if they have a budget, but how do we know they built that budget the right way, to Jessica's point? What's the impact that change could have on your organization? That's going to set the bar for the biggest possible budget. And what's nice about it, when you talk about wants and impacts, W plus I equals V, value. Now you're involved in a value sell. So when you bring up price, you can make sure that you already know that that value is going to be a 10x or 5x, whatever you feel like it has to be, against your price. Needs comes next after impacts. What's stopping you from getting there? What's missing? And then solutions. What kinds of solutions are you looking at? What would have the biggest impact? What's your background? What's your experience with these kinds of things? What do you like and don't like? Now you're prepared to make a recommendation. So you can organize your questions in a way that produce the fastest path to cash. It's the WINS model. I'm happy to send it to anybody who would like to see it after today. And Patrick, I'd say one more thing. I'm trying to keep this short because I don't want to dominate, but there's another thing to think about when you ask questions. The most powerful questions you can ask are the questions your client can't answer. Why do I say that? Every one of us on the phone today, on this call today, wants to be viewed as an expert. When I'm talking to a CEO about their organization, and I ask a question like, how much more effective could your sales force be? Unless they've done the research and the analysis, what are they going to say to me? I don't know. As soon as they say that, they're exposing a vulnerability, and I now have an opportunity to fill that void for them. So the more questions you can ask that they can't answer, that they want answers to, that creates anticipation, it creates momentum that's going to keep you moving through that process.
Wow, good stuff all around. Jessica, thanks for laying the foundation there to really make these guys have to up their game. That was great. I want to move us further down the sales process. Okay, so the meetings happen. You asked all the great questions. You made them feel vulnerable. They need you. They've exposed the need and the gap. The meetings happen. Maybe we've secured the next step. Maybe we haven't. I know that maybe maybe it's 60% of the time you get the next meeting. Sometimes they, wiggle out of scheduling next steps. But what happens next in your sales process and your lead handling process, right? How do you either keep them on the hook? How do you get them back engaged? How do you continue to push that from the meeting to the close now? Like, what happens next? What are some of the activities, some of the steps that can go into a sales process after meetings happen that can keep pushing it through the process to close? And I'll open it up.
I want to suggest that once you present your solution, wherever that may be, and I personally am a proponent of doing that last, that's the absolute last thing you do. Once once you present that solution, they have on some level made a decision. So they're at yes or no. They might be stalling. They might be, avoiding taking action for some reason, but on some level, they've made a decision. So especially if you set that up properly. So going back to those questions that somebody asked in the chat what they were, we'll get them to you. But those are all created to set up the environment so that when someone sees the solution, not only do they want to say yes, but they can say yes. Because you're talking to the right people, they've got the budget, it's the right time, and it's the right solution. So if they, at the end of like presenting that solution, they'll be able to give you a yes or a no verbally. All the other pieces that go in place come after that. But I do want to rewind a little bit, because I understand, we teach salespeople process because it's something you can follow. It's a step-by-step plan. But the biggest deals on the highest levels, they're all relationships, purely relationships, right? The higher you go, CEO to CEO, it's a handshake and it's a conversation. So salespeople putting themselves in that position of the expert and the peer, so that relationship is driving the whole sales process. So that by the time you present the solution, they've got everything they need, including their trust in you to say yes, to give you buy-in on some level. So if you find yourself in what I call the fatal follow-up funnel, it's because we haven't created this scenario where they can say yes at the time that they're emotionally most likely to say yes.
Very cool.
Well done. Excellent, Jessica. I would just add one quick thing, Patrick. One of the things that we have to focus on are the things that can derail us. So what do we do when someone says, I want to think about it? Are you prepared to push back? And are you prepared to ask them, I appreciate the answer. What is there to think about? Can you give me a sense? Are you prepared to take the lead in that conversation and challenge them? Or are you simply going to say, great, when would you like to get together again? To which they're going to say, well, you know what? Let me talk to my people and get back to you with a date and time that we might talk. Right. So that's one thing we should be prepared for. Frank, I know, has lots of great expertise in that regard, but be prepared for that and establish a relationship, to Jessica's point, that will allow you to push back from a position of respect, right? If we're always thinking about the relationship, we want to make sure they like us, then we may not be prepared to push back. But if we walk into the relationship and build one where they respect us, then they will value that pushback. And when we ask them, what else is there to think about? They'll be like, you know what? You're right. Let's go.
Yeah, a lot of these questions can come across really salesy if you don't have that relationship there. And again, going back to that mindset of, if you're there to help the person, then you will push back, because that they have an internal resistance not to change. That's human nature. So our primary job as salespeople is to help people take action when it's more comfortable to stay where they are. And you do that with the relationship. So you have to push back if you care about them.
And I would say that, just to add to that, when someone pushes back a lot of times and you challenge it, what they're going to tell you back is not necessarily the real big picture of what the objection is. So if you get into an objection and they give you an objection, whatever it is, either price or commitment or cost, when you push past that objection and say, if it was the right price, is it the right fit? And you kind of move past that objection, accept it and say, great. So now if that objection was okay, is there anything else? A lot of times when you dig a little deeper, you find that there's another hidden objection that you're not getting to. And that's what makes a sales cycle longer. So if they're like, oh, it's price, and say, okay, great. So if it was the price, does it fit your model, and will it work, and will it be a benefit? Of course, 100%. So you start talking about that and getting into it, and then you realize that there's another question they haven't had answered, and they don't even maybe know that they want to ask. So that's just what I would like to add to that.
Couple things. So just some basic one-on-one. Never end a meeting without securing the next meeting. Just don't do that, right? Don't. So where I'm so heavy on the front end is really to the point that Jessica and James made, is that it's about relationships, man. It's about the fundamentally understanding that, emotion is what motivates and ration educates, right? So a lot of times as sellers, we're in that rational brain. Here's my value prop. You have this issue. Here's my fix. We want to get to that emotional connection. And the more we understand our prospect, the deeper we dig, the more we know what makes them tick and what they care about, the closer we're going to get to that emotion. Because once we send our solution, and guys, I'm sorry, this is a little bit crude, but it is what it is. Our solution is like, that's the bullet, and we've got a gun and it has one bullet in it. And once you send your proposal, once you send your solution, you're done. So whatever you send, it better be right on the mark. Because if it's not on the mark, you're calling them up for the next couple of months and your boss is telling you, asking you why it didn't close when you said it had a verbal and it was going to happen and they liked me and we had a good solution and we fixed their pain. Well, it's because you probably really didn't understand what mattered the most to them.
Great addition, Ronnell. Awesome stuff. I'm going to open it up to questions. I know there's been many that have been chatted in. So if you have them, chat them. And if you would like us to call on you so you can ask these wonderful experts yourself, we'd love to call on you and unmute you so you can participate. I think this one might be a quick question while we're gathering other questions. How do you let go? I mean, I know we talked about it on the bad lead, it's a relationship. We'll put them on a drip campaign. We'll, keep great value and that kind of thing. But what happens when you're on that fatal follow-up funnel and it's time to say goodbye? Do you ghost them? Do you send the breakup email? Is there a best practice there that you follow in that funnel to get you out and out on good terms?
Are you talking about someone ghosting you? Like
I'm saying you ghosting them. I'm saying you ghosting them. That you're in the fatal follow-up funnel. You're checking in. They're not giving you a no. Maybe you get. Is that it? Do you get to the no, or how do you say goodbye when when it's not working out? How do you break up?
Ask for referrals. There's always every lead leads to a sale.
Right. So Patrick,
relationship, you've earned the referral.
Yeah, that's excellent. And so Patrick, here's what I would say. There's a great book out there, called Go for the No. And oftentimes that can be misconstrued, right? Every no has a condition to it, just like every yes has a condition to it. So what I would want to do, Patrick, is I would want to understand the no. Under these circumstances, yeah, it makes sense. It's not the right time. I agree. However, if things change, for example, if this one thing changes, it looks to me like, or as we've discussed, this would be a great opportunity. Do you expect that to change? When do you expect that to change? When it does, let's make sure we get back together again. Now, I'm as the salesperson, be doing my research, looking for that change, that shift in the market, that trigger that has to happen. But I've also created a conditional opportunity for us to re-engage. And so now when I follow up in a month, I can say, last time we spoke, we agreed that now, back then wasn't the right time. However, if these two or three things changed, it would be, how does the business look today? I always have a reason to go back to them without checking in or touching base. Let's agree to never check in and touch base. Let's follow up with something specific. And that's something specific was gained on that call. Go ahead, Patrick. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I love the understanding the no, because otherwise that's where I mean, these are personal questions. I'm selfishly just picking your brains. These are personal problems. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah.
Ronnell, Frank.
This happens we're in the sales world. It happens every day. I got a call from operations manager runs one of the companies that I own, and she had a similar situation. We've got a seller who has this big deal and they got the verbal and everything. She said, Ronnell, what should I tell him? I mean, he wants to know how he should handle it because it's not closing and this. And I said, keep it moving. Tell him to go prospect. Go find some more deals. Listen, you just like a farmer, you're going to nurture it. You'll go touch base with them a month from now or a couple weeks, whatever cadence makes sense. But where we often go wrong is we focus on that and don't go find new business. Go find new business. Hey, there's a question in the chat that I think is really important. And that question is from Eric Bishop. And Eric says, Ronnell, who is a better seller, you or Tasha? Tasha is my sister, and she's a sales leader at Zoom. She's amazing, but it's me. I taught her everything she knows. All right.
That's great. So we have some questions in the chat. Michael Coop, do you want to call on somebody to ask them, or would you like to ask on their behalf? I'm going to turn the mic over to you for some open Q&A.
Yeah, the first question I'll ask on this person's behalf, they are the godfather of metal. It says Ozzy Osbourne, but their question more specifically is, when it comes to lead to opportunity qualification, many of our sales teams are fixated on our solution before qualifying whether it's a customer we actually want. I don't want a sale for my team. I want a relationship that can go the distance. How do we help our sales teams manage this type of tension?
Yeah. So you have to prepare your team. So the first thing that I would ask a CEO or a sales leader is, how do you onboard your salespeople? How often do you put them through product training as the first introduction to your company, and then do no sales training, right? Or not walk them through, what does it mean to be one of our customers? Who is our ideal customer? What is their profile? What problems do they typically have? What triggers cause those problems? Who are the buyers within the buying center? What do they care most about? What are the personal things that they have at stake, or the risks that motivate them to buy from us? You've got to give your salespeople the ammo, the experience, the insight into what your customers are like and what they're all about, so they can be effective on the phone. And you can't hope they figure that out in the first 3 or 6 months. You can't leave it up to them to, bug the veterans for great stories. You have to capture those stories and communicate them. So if you don't want them pitching product, lay off the product training and invest in the customer training. Teach them who your always buyer is. Teach them who your always customer is. Give them that insight, and that's what they'll default to.
James, I think is great advice. And also what I like to do with sales training is to, in the morning sales meetings, play 3 of the best recorded calls and 3 of the worst recorded calls and talk about it. You can learn so much faster from actually hearing and applying things, that collecting data and doing, real deep dives into why was this a good call and how did it lead to a sale, and why was this a bad call. And we used to play in one of the sales teams I was growing, 3 and 3 in the morning, and they would identify it and be like a game, and everybody's learning curve would get so much quicker because it was real-time interaction and why, and there was a different kind of learning versus an hour sales training on how to build rapport. You heard rapport in 60 seconds and you got it. So I'd say that's another thing that you could do with your people to make them ramp up faster and pick stuff up intuitively rather than just training them.
I have two suggestions for you, Ozzy. Love your music, by the way. So go to tie into the sales training and buyer psychology training, the psychology of the buyer, understanding that how humans make decisions emotionally and logically, and that you do have that one silver bullet and that one chance for them to say yes. So it better be at the right time with the right people, and all of that. When they understand that they have one chance, so part of it's education, they have one chance. So it's okay to drag that out as long as you need to do the presentation or demo or offer at the right time. The second thing I want to suggest is looking at your compensation plan, because often salespeople, the compensation plan is that subconscious communicator that tells the salespeople what's really important. So I've seen, and the KPIs, your key performance indicators. So if people are if there's more of emphasis on doing demos or doing presentations than there is on, you know, closing the sale. That can be communicated in the compensation plan. So make sure your compensation plan reflects what you want to accomplish.
I'll just add something really brief. Imagine that brevity. Psychology. Ozzy, if they're product centric, your sellers are product centric, it's because that's how you're training them. Change the training, man. You got to focus more on helping your sellers to understand the psychology of sales. And that will get them away from just doing your product centric selling, and role play a lot.
Awesome. Thanks everybody on the panel. The next question is going to be from Bria. So Bria, if you could unmute yourself and ask the panel your question.
Hi guys, enjoyed everything so far. My question is just, what are some top tips that you'd give a new salesperson and some of the resources just to invest in themselves? I know I've been working with Frank and he's put me on to a book called The Art of Sales by Art Subject. Great book, very, very useful to me. Just any other resources that you would recommend?
I'll go first then. The phone. Pick up the phone. Listen, start thinking about what what are others not doing right now. Everyone, a lot of sellers are going towards easier technologies, right? They're using technologies to send out mass stuff. They're using more AI. They're using, more automation. Man, some of the old school things, like simply picking up the phone and calling people, you'd be surprised how successful you could be. But just as a philosophy, think about what everyone is doing and what they're not doing. And it really comes down to, salespeople, mostly we're lazy, just is what it is. So we're doing more of the lazy things. If you go back to some of the basic fundamental things that funnel you to a relationship. I love tech. I'm not pushing back against tech, but use it to funnel yourself to a real connection and a real relationship. I use personal video like it's going out of style. Am I right, Patrick? I use personal video. I've sent thousands and thousands of personal videos. It's a great way to start to build a connection through prospecting or, with existing customers, just to get some deeper connections and to be able to communicate at a much higher level.
And Ronnell, to add to that, I love low tech because when you send somebody a handwritten thank you card after having a conversation, it's so rare that you take the time to actually write something personal, in your handwriting and send it to them, that a lot of times it breaks through from all the noise of automated emails and workflows and things like that. So definitely picking up the phone, having conversations, and handwriting cards, which, yes, I love it. So I think that breaks through. And emails are a dime a dozen. You get them all day, but getting a special little tiny gift token or a handwritten card or something out of the ordinary changes the way that people look at you, and it makes a relationship deeper, quicker. So I think old school is the best.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything,
Okay.
but I'm actually stuck on this question. But do you have a coach at your place of work that's training you? Because there's a lot of people that don't. So
I'm training him.
There we go.
All right, Frank.
I have the best coach at the moment.
That makes it easy.
Well, I just have one quickie.
Dry of everything that he has to offer you, all the time that he is willing to give you. Do not stop asking him questions until he tells you you can't ask any more questions.
All right.
There you go.
So my sales trainer, I swear, I was 25 when I started, but I must have called him 20 times a day for the first 3 months. It wasn't just a couple of days that I was trained. So I would just keep asking questions to people, to experts who know the answer, not peers, but people who know how to answer it effectively.
Yeah, that's excellent. I have some quick recommendations. One is if you're asking that question to people outside your organization, you have to wonder whether or not you're working for the right organization, right? Success in sales is about identifying and practicing predictable patterns of success, right? Any of the techniques that we provide you have to be perfected in the context of your organization. If your sales organization can't answer that question for you, what can I do to be more successful? You have to ask yourself, are you in an organization that's going to advance your career? Should you be investing your time someplace else? And I know that there are probably CEOs and VPs of sales who hate me right now, but if people aren't asking you for the help, then you have to be wondering whether you're setting up your people for success. There are 3 levels of development, right? We're beginners, pros, or masters. Are you working in an organization that can move you from beginner to pro and from pro to master? If not, look around. As you're looking, look for organizations that truly understand what are their predictable patterns of success, and can they deliver those to you, explain those to you, and teach you how to execute.
Amazing stuff, guys. Everyone, these are such great answers to these questions. The next one I have for the panel is coming from a partner of ours called Chip. And his question is, we offer a niche software tool for government and public affairs. Often prospects are cynical about what data we are going to capture regarding their people's relationship with policymakers. They sometimes even ask for a pilot. How do you approach that, and how should I deal with that?
I want to suggest that this applies to everybody that gets objections, which is everybody, is that the objections that are the most difficult to overcome are the ones that you agree with. So I don't know you, Chip. I don't know you. I don't know you at all. But if you were my salesperson, the first thing I would address is, do you believe that they should be concerned with how the data is being shared, right? Because once you overcome that objection and you really, if you say no right away, if you disagree with me right away, I'll ask you to take a few moments and reflect on it, and then answer it. And that's also, for your salespeople too, to think about, do we agree with this? Do we think this is a problem? And that's going to be communicated consciously or subconsciously to your customer. You can't hide it, okay? Whether it's in your body language or your messaging or what have you. You'd be amazed. Once you overcome your own objections, all of a sudden you stop getting that objection from clients because it's not being communicated. And when you do get that objection, you can easily and effortlessly overcome it. That being said, if you get a common objection like that, privacy, the best way to overcome an objection is to handle it before the client brings it up. So if it's a common one that keeps coming up and you don't agree with it, it's not one that you have to overcome your own. Build it in earlier in the process. Build it into your presentation, build it into your messaging. Maybe your tagline has to be like with something about how secure and safe it is. Really getting that overcoming that objection super early in the process.
That's great insight, Jessica. So one thing I would say is, to Jessica's point, this idea of pushback, if you're talking about your solution at this point, you better have already talked about wants and impacts. Why do I say that? You want to talk about needs after wants and impacts, and you want to talk about solutions after needs. So solution is at the end. The reason it's at the end is because if you're talking about like data security, you have to help the client understand whether it's a must-have or a nice-to-have objection, or must-have or nice-to-have need. If your organization is already implementing best of breed and you're on par with every one of your competitors, then the question is moot. It doesn't matter, right? It's not a relevant question. It's designed to stump you. It's designed to put you off your game. It's not a must-have. If you're at par with everybody else, there's no difference between you and your competition. What's the challenge? So we used to get this all the time in technology. You know, the technologies used to pick apart our demos. The question is, what impact would that objection have on you being able to achieve your ultimate goals, right? Does the size of a data field, or does some other technical capability that you do or do not give really affect the overall objective and the ROI of this solution? So make sure you can put it into context by doing your discovery up front, understanding what's important, so you can really understand whether or not it's a must-have or a nice-to-have.
Yeah, not much to add to that. I'll just echoing Jessica's point. You got to run towards it. You know, there've been many times in my career where we've dealt with that with some of my companies, and yeah, once you understand whether it's legit. If it's legit, man, build it into your sales process, build it into your discovery process, so that it's something that you're addressing early on, and going ahead and squashing that, because it creates tremendous anxiety when it's kind of just hanging out there, and your seller's waiting for them to come with that objection, and then they're coming with that objection way late in the sales process, and it can totally derail the sale. So go at it early.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. The more that you address the problem and get past it, just like everybody said, it's a lot of great advice there. But if you do that and you identify that problem, it's important to build it into the organization and not just have some people using it. So it's good to take these types of systems that you build and make sure that even from the SDR to the account executive, you guys are all speaking the same language and moving past it as an organization. But that's all I got.
So, I mean, I think we're going to be running up on time here. I want to just say a huge thank you to Frank, Jessica, James, Ronnell for your time, your contributions, sharing your expertise with us. I'm sure there's going to be folks who want to get a hold of you after this. So find them on LinkedIn. They're on the event page. They're all over the internet, I'm sure. This is recorded. We will be sharing this. So if you found it helpful and you'd like to share with members of your team, a few days from now, it'll be available on the Nerdwise blog. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to our speakers. A big Zoom round of applause. You guys were awesome, and your expertise really just, it showed. So thank you very much for sharing everything with us. This was amazing. Great event.
Thanks for having us, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.